to read the transcript file first to understand the full story, then write a new one. My boss asked me that question on a Tuesday morning, and I remember thinking, out of everything that could have gone wrong that day, I never expected the answer to come from my own husband's mouth. I had been with the company for 6 years. 6 years of early mornings, late nights, covering shifts when my colleagues called in sick, staying on calls during family dinners. So, when I got the senior project coordinator position last spring, the car that came with it felt like proof. Not just a perk. Proof that it had all been worth something. It was a white Honda CR-V, nothing flashy, but it was mine. My name was in the paperwork. My manager, a man named Gerald, handed me the keys personally on a Friday afternoon and said, "You earned this." I drove home with the windows down even though it was 40 degrees outside. I just needed to feel the air. My husband, we had been married for 4 years by then, seemed happy for me. He kissed me on the cheek when I came through the door. He made dinner. He opened a bottle of wine we had been saving. I thought it was a good night. I thought things were finally evening out between us. What I didn't know was that 2 weeks later, while I was at a regional training in Cincinnati, he had given the car to his younger brother. Not borrowed. Given. He had driven the CR-V to his parents' house on a Saturday, handed the keys to his brother, who was apparently having trouble getting to work, and told him he could use it for a while. He never asked me. He never texted me while I was away. He just decided, the way he decided a lot of things, quietly, without consulting me, and then presented it as a reasonable solution after the fact. When I got back from Cincinnati, my car was gone from the driveway. He told me his brother needed it more than we did, that I could ride with him in the morning since we worked near the same part of town, and that I was being selfish if I couldn't understand that family comes first. I was so tired from the trip. I told myself I'd deal with it when I wasn't running on 4 hours of sleep and airport coffee. And then I kept not dealing with it because every time I brought it up, it turned into a conversation about what kind of person I was. Did I want his brother to lose his job? Was the car really more important than family? Was I always this materialistic? So I stopped bringing it up. I started taking the bus on the mornings we didn't leave at the same time. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself its brother would find another arrangement soon. That went on for 3 months. The Tuesday it all came apart, I had an early meeting. My husband had already left for the day, and the bus I needed wasn't running. Some kind of maintenance delay. Nothing announced until I was already standing at the stop. I ended up calling a rideshare, which cost me $22 I didn't want to spend, and I walked into the office 9 minutes late feeling frayed and embarrassed. Gerald caught me in the hallway near the elevator. He was carrying his coffee and a folder, the way he always did in the mornings, and he looked at me the way people look at you when something is visibly off. "You okay?" he asked. "Bus issues," I said. "I'm sorry I'm late." He kind of tilted his head. "Where's your car?" I opened my mouth. I had gotten so used to not talking about it, so used to managing the discomfort quietly, that for a second I genuinely didn't know what to say. And then Gerald added almost gently, "The CR-V we assigned you. I saw you pull up in a ride share." I felt something shift in me right there in that hallway. I don't know how to explain it except to say that hearing it said out loud, "We assigned you," reminded me that the car wasn't something I had asked for as a personal favor. It was a company asset assigned to me as part of my role, and I had let my husband give it to his brother for 3 months without saying a word to anyone. "My husband's brother has been using it," I said. My husband told him he could. The silence that followed was not comfortable. Gerald looked at me for a moment, then said, very carefully, "Did you authorize that?" "No," I said. "I didn't." He asked me to come by his office after my morning meeting. I spent the next 2 hours at my desk feeling like I was sitting in wet cement. I kept telling myself it would be fine, that Gerald would understand, that we could figure out a solution. But underneath all of that was something I didn't want to name yet. The thing that had been sitting in my chest for months, getting heavier. After my meeting, I went to Gerald's office. He had another woman there. Her name was Sylvia. She was from HR, not my husband's department, a different branch. I hadn't known she would be there, and I almost turned around in the doorway. But Gerald gestured to the chair across from him, and I sat down. He told me the situation needed to be documented. That a company vehicle had been used without authorization by a person who wasn't an employee for an extended period and that there were liability questions. He wasn't unkind about it, but he was clear. Sylvia asked me a series of questions. When had the car been taken? Had I given permission? Did I have any written record, texts, emails of my husband making this decision? I pulled out my phone. I had the texts from when I came home from Cincinnati, the ones where my husband explained what he'd done. They were all there, time-stamped. Sylvia read them and didn't say anything for a moment. Has your husband ever accessed other company resources on your behalf? She asked. I didn't understand the question at first. Then she explained there had been a flag on my account several months earlier, something related to expense reporting. She wasn't accusing me of anything. She said she wanted to understand the full picture. I told her I didn't know what she was referring to. She showed me a printed form. It was an expense report filed under my employee ID for a hotel stay in March. I had not stayed in any hotel in March. I had been home all of March. I had not filed that report. I sat there looking at it and something went very cold inside me. I didn't file this, I said. We know, Sylvia said. That's what we're trying to sort out. What came out over the next 3 weeks was this. My husband had access to my work login. I had given it to him 2 years earlier, when I needed him to check something for me while I was driving. One of those small moments of convenience that you don't think twice about. He had kept it. He had used it occasionally to look at my schedule, my performance reviews, my compensation information, and at some point he had figured out the expense system well enough to submit a claim for a hotel stay that he had actually taken with someone else. Someone who was not me. I didn't find out about the affair at the same time as everything else. That came later, from a conversation I had with a friend of his who had felt guilty for long enough. But when I look back at those 3 weeks, I think I already knew. I think I had known for a while and had chosen not to see it, the way I had chosen not to see so many other things. My husband worked in HR at a different company, not mine. But the skill set is transferable. He knew how systems worked. He knew how systems worked. He knew what people tended not to check. He knew that if something looked like an honest mistake, most people wouldn't push it. He had been operating that way for years, not just at work, but with me. The performance reviews he had been helping me prepare. Helping meant he'd rid myself of evaluations and suggested changes, toned things down, made me sound less confident than I felt. I had thought he was being realistic. I had thought I was being coached. I understand now that I was being managed. The time I missed the application window for an internal leadership program because I had forgotten the deadline. I hadn't forgotten. He had. He was the one who kept track of my calendar to help me stay organized, and he had not reminded me. Whether that was intentional, I'll never know for certain. But I know how it served him. The friends I had drifted from because he was always vaguely unpleasant at gatherings until I started declining invitations rather than dealing with his mood afterward. My sister, who lived 40 minutes away, who I hadn't seen in 8 months because every time I suggested a visit, something came up. I am not a naive person. I want to say that clearly, because I think people assume women who stay in these situations must be naive. I have a graduate degree. I have a job I am good at. I have opinions and instincts, and I trust them in most areas of my life. But there is something about the people we love or believe we love that creates a kind of blind spot that has nothing to do with intelligence. It has to do with the cost of seeing clearly. At some point, I had decided the cost was too high. I had chosen not to look. Gerald went to bat for me. He made it clear to the people above him that I had not authorized the car situation, that I was as surprised by the expense report as anyone, and that I had been fully cooperative. Sylvia's investigation corroborated that. The company's legal team sent a letter to my husband about the unauthorized vehicle use and the fraudulent expense report. I don't know exactly what happened on his end with that. I know he called me 17 times the afternoon he received it. I didn't answer. I had called a lawyer 2 days before that. My friend from college, someone I had always stayed loosely in touch with, had a sister who specialized in family law. I reached out and explained what I was dealing with, and she took a call with me that same week. She walked me through what documentation would matter, what to save, what not to do. She was calm and practical, and I felt talking to her like I was in a room where the air was finally breathable. The divorce took about 9 months. He contested some things, the way people do when they want to make the process painful rather than because they have a real case. He claimed I had authorized the car. He claimed the expense report was a mistake he had made on my behalf without explaining it to me. A favor gone wrong. His attorney presented it as a communication breakdown. My attorney presented the texts, the login timestamps, the dates. The contested expense report was repaid in full from the settlement along with attorney's fees, which the judge awarded on my side. I don't think about him much anymore. That's not something I expected. I thought untangling my life from his would feel like grief, would feel like losing something fundamental. And there were hard nights. There were nights I sat in my apartment. I kept the apartment in the settlement because my name was the one on the original lease, and I didn't know what to do with the quiet. I had lived in a state of low-grade management for so long that calm felt foreign. I didn't know, at first, what my own preferences even were without the constant counter-pressure of his opinions. I learned it is a strange and unglamorous process, learning to trust your own judgment again after someone has spent years eroding it. I started small, cooking what I wanted for dinner, calling my sister on a Wednesday evening just because I felt like it. Going to one of those gatherings I had stopped attending, standing in someone's kitchen with a glass of wine, laughing at something stupid and thinking, I forgot how much I like these people. I forgot what it felt like to be liked back without conditions. Gerald gave me a reference when I applied for a position at another company 6 months after everything settled. I did it partly because I wanted a clean start and partly because I had realized during all of it that staying in the same place while my husband's name still echoed in the building wasn't something I wanted to do. The new role is a step up. The pay is better. I drive there in the CRV, which the company eventually allowed me to keep as part of the formal resolution. They decided that given the circumstances, taking it back would have been punitive toward the wrong person. I think about Gerald sometimes, about that morning in the hallway. He could have let it go. He could have decided it wasn't his business how I managed my company vehicle. He could have made a note in a file and moved on. Instead, he asked me a direct question, in a hallway, with his coffee in his hand, and the answer I gave him cracked something open that had needed to be cracked open for a long time. I am not someone who believes everything happens for a reason. I think that framing lets us off the hook too easily, makes suffering seem designed rather than random. But I do believe that some questions arrive at exactly the right moment and how we answer them. Whether we're honest even when honesty is inconvenient, even when it opens doors we've been trying to keep shut. That matters. Not because the universe is watching, but because we are. I am 31 years old. I live alone for the first time in my life, and it turns out I am good at it. I have a job I am proud of, a sister who meets me for brunch most Sundays, and a car in the parking garage with my name on the registration. That feels like enough. More than enough. It feels, some mornings when I pull into my spot and sit for a second before going in, like the beginning of something I don't have a name for yet. I am not in a hurry to name it.